Welcome back to another edition of Force Friday, where we talk about Star Wars theories, characters, concepts, comparisons, analyzations, collectibles, and more. And today we're going to conclude our SH Figuarts trilogy of information I wanted to cover. Can you believe that we did it 3 weeks back to back? I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think it was going to happen. I can't believe it. Just because the material is so dense, there's a lot of ground to cover. It's complicated, it's intricate, and I thought we'd have to take a break in order to get all this information out to you, but we didn't. I do have one regret. Order of these videos kind of goes 2, 1, 3, but whatever. I'll label them, and then in the future, it'll make sense. It's our own little trilogy. Today, we're talking about the third and final component to the SH Figuarts Star Wars puzzle, which is Bluefin. And more importantly, how the import market affects the American market and vice versa. Now, in order to do this, we have to first establish what and who Bluefin is. They were founded in 2002. Bluefin Brands is a North American wholesale distributor of toys, collectibles, novelty, and hobby products. While they do carry some American brands, their primary focus, and the one they have become known for, is bringing import products from Japan and Hong Kong to the U.S. They are the official U.S. distributor of Bandai's Tamashii Nations brands, including SH Figuarts. They also carry brands like Storm Collectibles, Flame Toys, and even have a development partnership with the Japanese anime studio Studio Ghibli. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and I'm not even sure what that is, but it's a fact. And apparently, they are pretty legendary. So, in essence, Bluefin imports other brands' products and sells them to the US market. But it's more than that. They work to develop and grow the brands they carry. So how does Bluefin form a partnership with a brand like SH Figuarts? Former Bluefin president John Parker said in an interview, "We typically work with brands as their exclusive partner. So we're the only place that you can get their stuff. We're going to do the marketing. We're going to do the brand management. We're going to represent them at the shows. So anytime you see an SHF product being promoted at a Comic-Con or event in the West, that's Bluefin, not them directly." So how does Hasbro fit in? Well, by now, you've probably noticed that stores like Barnes & Noble and various comic retailers are carrying SH Figuarts, with even Toys R Us getting in on the action before their US chains went belly up. And as a side note, if Toys R Us would have been progressive in that mindset and gotten into the import market far before they went belly up, it may have affected how people treated them on the collector base leading up to their demise. But that's a conversation perhaps for another time. You can find most of SH Figuarts' premier lines, Dragon Ball Z, Kamen Rider, Marvel, at these stores. But one is surprisingly absent: Star Wars. Across the United States and even Europe, SH Figuarts Star Wars simply cannot be bought at retailers who stock other SH Figuarts lines. The reasons for this aren't 100% clear, so I want to get that out of the way ASAP. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is speculative and based on the little bit of information that we do know. The general belief is that Hasbro will refuse to sell to any brick and mortar retailer who stocks SH Figuarts Star Wars. Now, we've seen these sorts of tactics used before, and Bluefin is definitely the small guy in this fight, right? It can't go up against Hasbro. Who's going to want to stock Bluefin product over Hasbro products in an American market? On the other end, they're swinging up at Diamond Distribution, who's dealing pretty much exclusively with the comic book stores and such. So it's a lopsided fight, to say the least. We've seen these tactics used before by toy companies. We won't sell you this unless you do this. We've seen it in the third-party market, specifically with smaller retailers, regarding Transformers. The bottom line is SH Figuarts are far more expensive and far more of a niche market. Combine that with massive amounts of brands Hasbro produces and provides, and you can see how this is virtually impossible to argue or fight against. This ties heavily into Hasbro, and I'm not looking to make them out to be a villain or a monster in this story, but it is important to understand how they move and navigate in regard to Star Wars. Throughout their long history with Star Wars, Hasbro have always been very protective of their license with them. They seem to never sublet the brand to smaller companies, something many fans wanted them to do from 2015 through 18 when they produced so few super articulated 3 3/4 inch figures. They also tend to imitate other, more niche areas of the collecting world. Whenever a new market trend emerges in collectibles, Hasbro usually develops something in that pocket skyrocket for Star Wars. In 2002, Kotobukiya began their Star Wars statue kits, dynamically posed, snapped-together statues, a majority of which were sculpted beautifully, painted well, but built terribly. That same year, Hasbro began developing Star Wars Unleashed, which were dynamically posed plastic statues. Let's take a look at 2015, when they began producing their props as part of the Black Series, presumably seeing the demand with low-running companies like EFX, or as we commonly called it, Force Effects. More recently, we've seen the likes of Black Series titanium helmets, or even Hyper Real, which seem to be going for the Mezco Hot Toys market. We've seen those single-pose diorama type 1/12 scale statues that seem to be going at the Art FX 1/10 scale statue. There are numerous other examples, but the point we're making, whenever a new market emerges relating to Star Wars products, even the very niche, Hasbro tries to corner it. They are also clearly reluctant to sublet or relinquish any aspect of the brand they hold, even to a smaller company. Hasbro knows the value of this brand. It's been there since the 1970s, and whatever way the wind blows year to year, they know it will come back around and be an endless goldmine. This is not the only brand that we see Hasbro doing this with. The reason why we have a third-party problem in regard to Transformers is because Hasbro refuses to license transforming products of those characters to other companies, especially at a higher-end retail market. This is par for the course with them. So the question is why? And the answer to this question and most questions is usually money. And I think it's probably the case here, but perhaps not the way that we're expecting. Perhaps not the way that money is that answer in regard to third party. Perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps Hasbro isn't getting enough money. I know that sounds crazy. Give me a chance to just shoot out a perspective. A possible aspect to this is the cost of the Star Wars license fee. Until very recently, Hasbro's Star Wars contract with Disney was insanely high, with a licensing fee of at least 20%, high minimum guarantees regardless of sales, and a 20% royalty rate of net sales. Since 1997, Hasbro has paid Lucasfilm and now Disney a minimum guarantee of $730 million at least. A very well-researched estimate on Jedi Temple Archives speculated that Hasbro could have paid a grand total of $1.5 billion in royalties and minimum guarantees since the 1990s. Make no mistake, by industry standards, that is a massive amount. Using this information to look at Hasbro's reported numbers, it's very likely that in the past 5 years, Disney have made more money on Hasbro Star Wars products than Hasbro. With this in mind, you can begin to see how Hasbro might give the possibility of Star Wars Figuarts being available at retail more attention than another brand like, say, Marvel, which you don't see the shackles being put on as stringent in regard to the SH Figuarts Marvel line, which seems to get a pass at Barnes & Noble. You also see the Bandai model kits make their way through. More often the ships than the figures, but the figures have started popping up as well. You also see the movie realization, the samurai ones popping up because once again, that's not in direct competition with the 1/12 market. It may very well be that Hasbro has contractual obligations in writing with Lucasfilm that they'll pay these high royalties and fees, but will accept no competition. And the reason why this other stuff is able to make their way through is because one is a model, one isn't based off the films literally, and is at a slightly bigger scale. The truth could very well be that Hasbro needs to make every penny they can off of this brand because the license is so high. However, there's a chance that that license fee came down, especially at renegotiations just recently. Not to be confused with aggressive negotiations, of course. So what does it mean for the future? Now that we understand the many reasons Hasbro doesn't want SH Figuarts Star Wars line gaining a foothold in a retail market in the West, we can begin to speculate on that. As I just mentioned, recently Hasbro renewed their Star Wars and Marvel licenses. The details aren't public, and you know me, I'm obsessed with the numbers. I would love to know the numbers, but nobody wants to give me the numbers, and the numbers drive me insane. But it's generally believed that the license fees were reduced for Star Wars and increased for Marvel. Now, Hasbro probably won't go for something as high as their Star Wars deal, but in the coming years, it's going to be interesting to see if Hasbro starts putting the pressure on Figuarts Marvel lines and maybe pay less attention to the Star Wars ones. Although with Figuarts, Marvel being already available and Star Wars having the history with Hasbro Hasbro that it does, the situation will most likely stay exactly the same. Because that's generally how negotiations work. Nobody wants to give up anything, and everybody wants to gain a little bit more. So why would Hasbro give up a no competition clause just because they're sitting back down at the table? And what does Lucasfilm have to gain from it? So it was probably a no-brainer that it would continue. To be fair, I would imagine that Hasbro has a little bit more leverage in manipulating the Marvel side of things and being able to gain a stronger foothold in that and restrict the import market regarding Marvel. But that market, Bluefin, contractually will have ties already, once again, contractually with retailers. So the whole thing is going to get tricky and sticky. But one thing's for sure, two things for certain, everybody wants to make sure that they get their presumed just piece of the pie. And for both Marvel and Star Wars, what a plentiful pie it is. Sometimes bitter, often fattening, but usually delicious. And with that, I hope you guys are being sane. I hope you guys are being safe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.